Happy Women's History Month. I'm Nubia. I am the 5th child and 2nd daughter of Janice. My mother has always been one of the hardest working women I know, extremely diligent. I come from a long line of hardworking women, unfortunately not often given the opportunity to live the soft life that they deserve. My mom is a devout Christian who found her way back to God in her own way. She always tells us if the rapture comes and Jesus returns and we're not behind her, we're going to get left behind. But she actually ended up becoming a deaconess at her church. A woman who does not play about education. She was the very first in her family to go to college and ended up going to a few different colleges, but ultimately ended up getting her associate's degree from Onondaga Community College, her bachelor's degree from Syracuse University, and at the age of 50, she got her master's degree from Syracuse University and went on to get her certification in social work, where she now helps to protect, reset, and educate battered women and children as well as men. A woman who does not play about her kids. A woman who will make sure that her children eat, even if that means that she doesn't. My mom loves a good joke, loves to garden. I come from a woman who loves her flowers, who, when growing up, we used to have a whole food garden in the backyard and it would be dinner. One of those moms where every now and then she might tell you about some food that she got and secretly share it with you and not tell anybody else about it. She'd create those special moments, and I'm sure she did this with all of her kids, but she would create those special moments with you individually. Like, yes, we have a collective relationship with my mama, but we also all have individual personal relationships with her too. My mom is from South Carolina, Darlington, South Carolina. Prior to her moving around to multiple different places, she has deep roots in South Carolina. I am mostly going to be covering the women in my mom's side of the family. So like I said, I am the daughter of Janice. I am the granddaughter of Mary Louise. And like my mother, who learned from her, Mary Louise could cook, honey. I have many recipes in mind that my mom got from her that she passed down to us. I don't eat many other people's mac and cheese almost ever if it's not like my mom who got it from her mom. Okay? No one has mac and cheese like us. Just saying. You could challenge me all you want. I have never been proven wrong. So I never got the chance to meet my grandmother. Unfortunately, she passed away 5 years before I was born and a couple of months before my brother was born. She was a woman who could laugh. She was a woman who did not play about anything, okay? I was told Grandma Mary had a razor sharp tongue and did not tolerate any form of disrespect. She was willing, ready, and more than capable to fight grown men twice her size and win from a very young age. She was familiar with a gun and would not hesitate to hit you with her Thunderbird. Unfortunately, she did experience domestic violence, but if a man ever put his hands on her, she made sure to leave her mark on him. It was never one-sided. Outside of standing on business, she was a woman who could always make a way. She was one of those women that didn't have to necessarily wait and ask a man to change a tire on her car. No, she was one of those women who could fix a car, who could prime a pump, who could fix heaters, plumbing, electrical issues, and so on. She had to learn a lot from a very young age. She worked in the fields with her mom, and she actually ended up having to leave school pretty early on in order to help take care of her grandmother along with one of her sisters. And this is all before giving birth to her first child at the age of 15, my mom. But she was a woman who could cook anything down, from what I have been told. She cooked things that people wouldn't normally eat, but if she cooked it, they'd eat it because they knew it was going to be good. I found out that she worked in a hotel with her daughters as a chef. How cool is that? She was not a fan of anybody coming in the kitchen, taste testing, putting their fingers, none of that, until she was done. You do not touch her food until she was done. And I was told for a while she kept up the tradition of her mother of cooking a pie or a cake every Sunday. I might need to start, doing that. But Sunday dinners was a big deal for a while. My grandmother was a woman who liked luxury if she could create it for herself. If she couldn't get it for herself, she created it for herself. I was told that part of the reason why she knew how to cook so well is because all these places that deny Black people from eating at these fancy restaurants and all these things, She said, oh, you won't let me in? Okay, fine, I'll figure out how to cook it myself. So she could cook the exotic things like lobster and all these things from what my mother was telling me about her. You know, she said, if you're not going to give me that life, I'm going to create it. And I respect that. I'll go get her. Mary Louise was born in 1943. And she transitioned to the ancestors in 1990. Now, I am the great-granddaughter of Mary Lou. Mary Lou Wilson. Mary Lou Wilson was born in 1918. From what I was told, Mary Lou Wilson had a very sweet spirit, a very sweet soul, a beautiful smile, and she loved on her grandbaby. She loved her kids and she loved her grandbabies. I remember hearing a story again with cooking with my mom telling me that it didn't matter how much food was in the house. She always found a way to make sure everybody was fed. Anybody that came over had a meal. How beautiful is that, right? I heard some of her signature dishes was cornbread and potato salad. Apparently nobody can make a cornbread and potato salad like her. She did not play about her flower garden. You come into her yard with your car, you better not run over her flowers. She had a small house. I'm recollecting from stories. I'm interviewing my family members about her because I never got the chance to meet her, but she was well loved. And I remember my mom telling me about these images that she would get out of the prints that came out of bedspread and quilt packaging. And if it had flowers, that would be even better. She would take the image out and she'd decorate her walls with it because she just thought it was so pretty. All right, so my little one woke up, so you may hear some coos and playing in the background. Yes, my great-grandmother, Mary Lou. Mary Lou loved when she would get her check every month. She would take her grandbabies into town to get snow cones and ice cream and all the fun things. You know, paint the town red. She enjoyed having fun, okay? She was one of 17 children, right? So let's go back again. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Leah Henry Wilson. Maiden name Henry, married name Wilson. Leah Henry was born around 1878. And she married my second great-grandfather, Samuel Lewis Wilson Jr. in 1898. I believe this is the oldest photo that I've been able to find of someone who's still alive today in my family that remembers these people born in the 1800s. I've been having a hard time tracking down her information, but that actually goes to underlying another issue in genealogy. It's already difficult tracking down Black people, but it's become even more difficult to track down specifically Black women because of name changes through marriage. South Carolina was one of those states where morality laws applied, where a man and a woman could not live together unless they were married or related. I noticed that if their name is changed, you have to either just interview family members or know something from stories passed down from oral history about what their names were before they got married. Because other than that, it will be hard to track that unless you're finding things like a marriage license, which sometimes gives their names as well as parents' names. Now, the only thing that I was able to find on Leah was a death certificate that stated her father's name and not a mother. And his name was James Henry. But we're going to be focusing on Leah. Now, I could not find her mother's name. My family did not know her mother's name. I could not find her on the 1880 census. But I wonder if there was another name change. But yeah, so let's focus on what I did find and what I do know. So Leah Henry, her father is James Henry. And I was able to track down a sibling with the help of another one of my cousins. Shout out to my cousin Donald. But I was able to track down one of her siblings, well, a couple of her siblings actually, but a mini Henry who ended up marrying a man with the last name Davis. Turns out I had DNA matches directly from her line. So that's how I was able to trace back from the DNA matches trees to figure out who's who. And I also saw that their last name was Henry. And putting two and two together, I was able to find their mother. So Elizabeth Wheeler. She had two last names, Elizabeth Wheeler as well as Elizabeth McFadden. So yeah, James Henry and Elizabeth Wheeler, they had my second great grandmother, Leah Henry. Now, Leah Henry and Sam Lewis Wilson were very busy. They had their hands full. Why? Because as I stated before, they had 17 children. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine having that many children. And unfortunately, Sam, he was a little bit, just a few years older than my second great grandmother Leah, but he passed away in about 1930, around 1928, 1930, and she didn't pass away until 1956. So yeah, some of their kids were grown by that time, but some weren't, which is unfortunate, but it's okay, you know, because she's a survivor. Let's talk about the hardworking women in my family. She definitely did work just like her daughter and just like her daughter out in the fields. Cotton, tobacco. We're talking about the rural South. We're still talking about South Carolina, the parts that are Sumter, Darlington, Lee County, Florence, South Carolina. This is the rural South at the time. And this is around the turn of the century that she's becoming a young lady and marrying off and having children. Let's talk about how the idea of the soft life that we think of today, and even the idea of the housewife that we've been told what a housewife is, I'm understanding more and more the concept of that type of housewife did not become a reality for us until after the First World War. We all had to work. We had to not only raise these children, but we would have these kids with us working in fields or amongst other things, you know, doing housework for other families who don't look like us. The typical housewife where you hear about them staying home, cooking dinner, having the house clean, tending to the children, that was almost a non-existent reality for many Black women in the rural South during the late 1800s into the 30s, if not further. So just a little history. Specifically in South Carolina, after our boys came home from the First World War, they were getting checks that were able to sustain themselves and their families pretty well, where their wives did not have to go and be cooks or maids or housework people for a lot of these white families in the South. White people were so, let's use the word, flabbergasted and astonished that these women did not want to come and work for them, thinking that they needed the money. And they were not used to doing these things on their own or not having the option of bringing these women in as employees. So they actually had a town hall meeting. I can't remember specifically what city in South Carolina, but it affected all of the state of South Carolina, amongst other cities, where they had a town hall meeting where they ultimately voted to force women to work in these positions, Black women to work in these positions, regardless of how much money that their husbands were making to sustain the household. They made it illegal for Black women to not work. Crazy. My second great grandmother was affected by this based off of the timeline alone. Yeah, just, you know, something to think about. But anyways, let's talk about a little bit more about what I did find out, because 1956 was not that long ago. And I have a grand aunt. My grandmother's sister is still alive, very sharp, and still kicking. And she told me when I was interviewing her that my second great grandma Leah, her grandmother Leah, lived with her, her mother, her sisters, and for the last 12 years of her life. She ended up having a stroke and ultimately ended up killing her. But you know, Leah, my Aunt Margaret, that's her name. She said that Leah was extremely joyous. She could laugh at anything. When they would, you know, clean her and moisturize her body, she would be cracking up throughout the whole process. When she was working for the few years that she was before she moved in, or like right when she moved in, she wasn't working for too long after that, she would bring tobacco home from the fields that she was working in, you know, boil it up, dry it out, and, you know, smoke her tobacco. And she would let my aunt smoke a little bit of it. And one day my great grandmother Mary Lou came in and said, "Mom, what are you doing? Let this girl smoke." And she would just crack up. That's all she could do was just laugh. I was told that, oh goodness, one of her favorite dishes was chicken noodle soup. They used to buy it by the caseload, but chicken noodle soup and saltine crackers was her favorite thing to eat. And when she was still cooking, one of her signature dishes was chicken bog. Now, if y'all don't know what chicken bog is, it is definitely a Southern dish, but I remember my mom made it a couple times when I was younger, but chicken bog has stayed in this family, okay? I was also told that she didn't talk much about her family, which is another reason why they did not know who her mom was. My family did not know who any of her sibling was. They knew of maybe one sister, but they didn't know her name. And so I was really happy that I was able to find the names of them. For now, that's all I have for you. I wanted to share some of the stories of the women in my family, and I'm going to continue to do that on this journey. But just to reiterate, I am the second great-granddaughter of Leah Henry. I am the great-granddaughter of Mary Lou Wilson. I am the granddaughter of Mary Louise Wilson. And I am the daughter of Janice.